Namaskar, good evening. It's 9 p.m. Time for the news on Sansad TV. I'm Rajiv Singh. First up, the headlines at this hour. 3 Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists, including 2 Pakistani terrorists, shot dead in Jammu and Kashmir. More than a dozen people detained in raids against the terrorists in the valley. 70% reduction in districts affected by left-wing extremism. AFSPA removed from over 66% area of Northeast, says Union Home Minister at the inauguration ceremony of National Tribal Research Institute. Decks cleared for the appointment of the new CDS. Defence Ministry notifies change in rules. Retired officers from rank of Lieutenant General or General also eligible for the post. Not just knowledge, new education policy focuses on skill development also. President Kovind says higher educational institutions have a huge role in development of the country. Civil Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia announces first National Air Sports Policy 2022. Focus on 11 sports, including ballooning, game and parachuting. Let's now look at some more important stories of the day. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman flags off iconic day celebrations of Corporate Affairs Ministry as part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. IMD issues orange alert for severe heat wave across North Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab, Delhi and Bundelkhand regions. Prime Minister Modi to lay the foundation stone for Bengaluru Suburban Rail Project on 20th of June. 15,000 crore rupees project will connect Bengaluru city with its suburbs. Government will hold negotiations at World Trade Organization to protect the interests of country's fishermen, says Union Minister Piyush Goyal. Coin exhibition showcasing history of coin making, collection and history of Saifabad Mint inaugurated in Hyderabad as part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav celebrations. In the Sidhu Moosewala murder case, 8 people arrested for providing logistical support, conducting and harboring the shooters. India-Bangladesh joint military exercise Sampriti commences at Jeshore in Bangladesh. Multinational peacekeeping exercise Ex-Khan Quest 2022 featuring military contingents from 16 countries including India starts in Mongolia. South Africa says Gupta brothers accused of political corruption during the regime of former President Jacob Zuma arrested in UAE. In a tit-for-tat move, Russia's foreign ministry announces sanctions on 61 American citizens. Now news in detail. 2 Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists, including a Pakistani, were killed in an encounter with security forces in Jammu and Kashmir's Kupwara district. The encounter took place in the Chaktaras Kandi area of Kupwara, where security forces had started a cordon and search operation. The terrorists were killed in retaliatory firing. The Pakistani terrorist was identified as Tufail.
जिसमें एक पाकिस्तानी टेररिस्ट मारा गया जिसके डॉक्यूमेंट से उसका नाम हंजला पाया जाता है। ये लाहौर का रहने वाला है। उसके पास AK-47 5 मैगजीन मिला है, काफ़ी हथियार, और वहाँ से 2 पाकिस्तानी टेररिस्ट भागने में कामयाब भी हो गया है, लेकिन उसका दोनों का पिट्ठू गिर गया। उसमें बहुत सारे डॉक्यूमेंट्स मिला है जिस पर हम लोग और स्टडी कर रहे हैं। दूसरा इनकाउंटर कुपवाड़ा डिस्ट्रिक्ट में हुआ है।
In a separate encounter, a Lashkar-e-Taiba militant was killed and 3 others escaped in Baramulla district. Also in Jammu and Kashmir, police detained over a dozen people in the Union territory after conducting raids at various places to investigate their alleged links with terrorist commanders based in Pakistan. The raids were conducted in Srinagar, Baramulla, Anantnag, Kulgam in Kashmir Valley and Jammu, Ramban, Udhampur and Kathua in Jammu region. The central government considers its Vaccine Friendship Initiative a major achievement on foreign policy front. Addressing an event to mark the completion of 8 years of the Narendra Modi government, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said the thinking of Indian foreign policy has become defined and visible both ideologically and in terms of clarity.
We have overcome the hesitations of history and will not allow anyone a veto on our choices. A nation like India obviously needs to contemplate its security in the broadest way possible. In the past, mantras of globalization lowered its defenses and discouraged the building of deeper strength.
Union Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandaviya launched the logo of Ayurveda Ahar on World Food Safety Day. He said this will help create a unique identity for an Ayurvedic diet and promote healthy living and a better life.
स्वस्थ समाज तंदुरुस्त राष्ट्र का निर्माण करता है और तंदुरुस्त राष्ट्र ही आगे बढ़ सकता है, अपना गोल को अचीव कर सकता है। और हम सब लोग देख रहे हैं पिछले सालों में देश का होलिस्टिक डेवलपमेंट हो रहा है।
Congress leader Rahul Gandhi visited late Punjabi singer Sidhu Moosewala's house in Punjab's Mansa district and offered condolences to the family members. Punjab Congress Chief Amarinder Singh Raja Waring, leader of the opposition Pratap Singh Bajwa, along with other Congress leaders, accompanied him. India has successfully test-fired the medium-range ballistic missile Agni-4. During the test, all operational parameters of the missile and the reliability of the system were confirmed. Under the nationwide vaccination campaign, over 194 crore 27 lakh anti-COVID vaccines have been administered so far. In the last 24 hours, 3,714 cases have tested positive. The recovery rate is 98.72%. Union Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said that regulators and other bodies should be ahead of the curve in understanding the process of digitization. She was addressing the iconic day celebrations of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs organized under Amrit Mahotsav in Delhi. She said that retail investors have come in such a big way that they seem to act like shock absorbers.
It clearly shows, though it's a regulatory ministry, largely, how it has impacted the lives of common Indians, be they in small business or a part of a larger business or even a small investor. How during these 75 years, catching up with what's developing, the ministry has evolved the various instruments through which it relates to the common Indian citizen.
Union Power Minister R.K. Singh said power-producing companies have started importing coal to boost electricity supply. He informed that demand for electricity has also increased significantly, mainly owing to the availability of electricity connections in 2.86 crore new households.
Reserve stocks came down and started coming down from, it came down from 24 million tons odd, I'm talking about domestic coal, in the coal plants, in the power plants. It came down to about 19 million tons on the 30th of April, 24 on 1st April, 19 30th, and it came down to about 18.5 on the 31st of May. But now, so the imports have started coming, so now it's, yeah.
The number of districts affected by left-wing extremism has come down by 70% during the tenure of Prime Minister Modi-led central government. Union Home Minister Amit Shah made these remarks at the inauguration of the National Tribal Research Institute. He added that the Armed Forces Special Powers Act was withdrawn from over 66% of the Northeast. The Home Minister said the Northeast and the left-wing extremism affected areas are tribal-dominated and security is the foremost requirement for the development of these areas.
वामपंथी उग्रवाद की घटना 2009 में 2258 थी, 2021 में 509 तक सीमित कर रह गई। वामपंथी उग्रवाद के जिलों में भी 70% की कमी भारतीय जनता पार्टी की नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार लाई है। और पहले मौतों की संख्या नागरिकों की 1005 थी, इसको घटकर अब 147 तक सीमित हो गई।
The Ministry of Defence has notified changes related to the eligibility conditions for the appointment of Chief of Defence Staff. Under the new rules, the government can consider a retired officer from the rank of Lieutenant Governor or General for the post. However, the age of the officer cannot be more than 62 years and the time of the appointment. The post of CDS has been vacant after the death of the country's first CDS, General Bipin Rawat, last December. President Ramnath Kovind said the new education policy focuses not only on knowledge but also on skill development. Addressing the Presidential Visitors Conference 2022 in Delhi, he said higher education institutions will need to play a vital role in India's development. The President is the visitor to 161 central higher educational institutions. Apart from the heads of these institutions, Education and Skill Development Minister Dharmendra Pradhan was also present in the conference. Topics such as international ranking of higher educational institutions, coordination between academia, industry and policymakers, education and research are being discussed.
Institutions of higher education have a major responsibility of transforming the impressionable youth. For this, we need to address their aspirations as they are future leaders in various spheres of life. I can say with confidence that each one of you is going to help achieve this goal.
Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu returned to India after his three-nation visit to Gabon, Senegal and Qatar. During the visits, he held extensive discussions with the top leadership of the three countries to deepen and strengthen bilateral relations. Agreements were reached to enhance cooperation and partnership in various fields. He also interacted with the industrial fraternity and Indian community in all the three countries. Before leaving for home, the Vice President addressed the people of the Indian community in Qatar. He said the success of the Indian diaspora has changed the perception of the world towards Indians. The Vice President said that the 7.8 lakh Indian community residing in Qatar is a living bridge between the two countries.
The government has been working with a vision for the future, a vision to create a new India we can be proud of. Today, the government is integrating technology and its core for the welfare of the people. IT sector, India is moving forward.
Time for a short break here. On the other side, a bill to ban the Palestinian flag in state institutions generates furious debate in Israel. Welcome back. Time now for all the main developments from Russia-Ukraine war front. Street fighting raged for control of Ukrainians' flashpoint city of Severodonetsk, with the situation changing every hour. Kiev warned that its troops were outnumbered by Russian forces. The mayor, however, asserted that no one is going to abandon Severodonetsk. Just days ago, Moscow seemed too close to taking the strategic industrial hub in the east, but Ukrainian forces managed to hold out. Late on Monday, Ukrainian President Zelensky said fierce street fights are continuing in the city. The European Council President blamed Russia for the looming global food crisis, prompting Moscow's United Nations ambassador to walk out of a Security Council meeting. Addressing the Security Council, Charles Michel said Russia alone was responsible and rejected Moscow's attempts to reject blame through a campaign of lies and disinformation. Vishal said he had witnessed how grain and wheat were stuck at the port of Odessa because of Russian blockade. A UN top official warned the Security Council that there are mounting allegations of sexual violence as the Russia-Ukraine conflict drags on. Pramila Patin, the special representative on sexual violence in conflict, told council members that due to the breakdown of referral pathways for services and stigma associated with sexual violence, alleged victims are unable or unwilling to report to law enforcement authorities or service providers. Moscow will not be able to retain its military capabilities due to tough Western sanctions imposed as a result of Russia's invasion on Ukraine. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has said. He added that far-reaching sanctions will set back the Russian economy by decades. That means it will not be able to participate in global economic and technological progress. Japanese and NATO officials agreed to step up military cooperation and joint exercises as they shared concerns that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is causing a deterioration of the security environment in Europe and Asia. Japanese Defense Minister Nobuo Kishi said that Japan hopes to strengthen its ties with European countries and welcomes NATO's expanded involvement in the Indo-Pacific region. Russia is turning over the bodies of Ukrainian fighters killed at the Azovstal steelworks plant in the destroyed city of Mariupol. Dozens of the dead taken from the bombed-out mills, now Russian-occupied ruins, have been transferred to Kiev, where DNA testing is underway to identify the remains. Time now for some other global updates. New Yorkers under 21 will not be able to buy semi-automatic rifles under a new law signed by its governor. The Democrat governor, Kathy Hochul, signed 10 gun-related bills on Monday to make the state one of the first to enact legislation following a wave of deadly mass shootings. One law will require micro-stamping in new firearms that could help law enforcement solve gun-related crimes. Another revised the state's red flag law that allows courts to temporarily take away guns from people who might be a threat to themselves or others. New York's legislature passed the bills last week, pushing the changes through after a pair of mass shootings involving 18-year-old gunmen using semi-automatic rifles. A robotic system is helping scientists discover so-called super algae that can fight climate change. The tiny aquatic plants get rid of carbon from the atmosphere up to 40 times more efficiently than trees.
This robot is playing a big role in the battle against climate change. It scans samples of algae and analyzes their properties. The idea is to locate organisms that can remove CO2 from the atmosphere. These super algae are expected to transform into usable materials like fibers for the textile industry, bioplastics for building companies, or resources for the food industry. So the CO2 absorbed by the plants would be trapped inside the products for several years. This is where the algae phenotyping system robot comes in. It works much more quickly than humans. Where it took 6 months of manual work to pick out features of a single strain of algae, it now takes just about 1 week. The pre-programmed robotic arm runs on a rail that allows it to move back and forth between different stations. It works on an algae hotel that provides the right conditions for the plants to live, grow and multiply.
What happens then is that the robotic arm, much like the human would previously, accesses that hotel, pulls out a particular sample of algae, and then moves them to different stations for analysis. We have different imaging technologies which allow the system to see things that human eyes cannot see. It allows us to then capture that data and push it through various software packages, and the software packages allow the scientists to do in-depth analysis, comparison studies, etc., ultimately helping us accelerate the discovery process to find what we call the super algae.
This brick is an example of a product for the construction industry that can be made from algae compounds. The tiny aquatic plants capture CO2 up to 40 times more efficiently than the trees. Once the elite or super algae has been identified as usable in the industrial process, it can then be grown on a bigger scale in bioreactors. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And in other news from across the world. Cash strapped to Sri Lanka on Tuesday asked the International Monetary Fund to arrange a creditor meeting for $6 billion in loans to help keep the country afloat during its unprecedented economic crisis. Lankan Prime Minister Singh said the next 3 weeks will be tough in obtaining fuel and cooking gas and has urged people to be united. The island nation has had to repay nearly $7 billion this year out of some $25 billion to be paid back by 2026. The country's total foreign debt is $51 billion. South Korea and the US military conducted a combined air power demonstration on Tuesday to display their readiness to strike North Korea. South Korea's military launched 16 warplanes. The display of military readiness came just a day after South Korea and the US launched 8 ground-to-ground missiles in response to North Korea's missile provocation, which took place on Sunday. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson met this cabinet on Tuesday after surviving a no-confidence vote. He vowed to get on with the job and focus on what matters to the British people after Conservative Party lawmakers voted by 211 to 148 to support him as leader. Johnson needed the backing of 180 of the 359 Conservative lawmakers in Monday's secret ballot to stay in power. More than 100 firefighters were battling wildlife near the city of Hesperia in Southern California on Monday. The fire department said the blaze quickly burned an area of at least 95 acres and was not contained as of Monday evening. One person was hospitalized with burns. 11.93 million students attended China's college entrance exams this year, which started on Tuesday. The Ministry of Education said 330,000 exam sites have been set up with 1.02 million invigilators and other personnel on duty to ensure the exam runs smoothly. Stringent COVID-19 control measures have been put in place in all the exam sites. The exam, known as Gaokao, is a critical stage in young students' lives in China. A bill banning people from flying Palestinian flags at state-funded institutions passed a preliminary Knesset vote last week. The bill must pass 3 additional Knesset votes to become law, but that isn't expected to happen soon. The vote comes amid a fierce public debate over Palestinian flags on Israeli university.
במדינת ישראל יש מקום לדגל אחד, לדגל ישראל. לדגל הזה, זה הדגל היחיד שיהיה כאן.
תודה רבה, לא. בבקשה להפסיק את מחיאות כפיים.
Not a bomb, gun or rocket. Israel is calling the Palestinian flag the latest threat. In recent weeks, Israeli authorities have gone out of their way to challenge the hoisting of the Palestinian flag. An opposition lawmaker has sponsored a bill that would ban the waving of the Palestinian flag at publicly funded institutions. The bill to ban the flag passed in its first reading last week. Palestinian citizens of Israel see the campaign as another affront to the national identity and their rights as a minority in the majority Jewish state. Israel's Palestinian citizens make up 20% of the population. Since the creation of Israel in 1948, Palestinian citizens have carved a life for themselves in Israeli society, reaching the highest echelons in various spheres, including health, education and public service. An Arab Islamist party, for the first time in history, is now a member of a governing coalition.
هذا رمز من رموز الشعب الفلسطيني وكمان الأقلية الفلسطينية الموجودة هون في الداخل المحتل. فمن حقنا إنه إحنا نرفع علمنا الفلسطيني ونرفع رموزنا الفلسطينية كمان لبس كعلم داخل المؤسسات وأيضا في الشوارع، كوننا هذا إشي بيميزنا كأقلية موجودة في الداخل.
Police at a funeral in East Jerusalem last month for the well-known Palestinian-American Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh snatched Palestinian flags for mourners. 2 Israeli universities were slammed by nationalists for allowing Palestinian flag to be waved at campus events. Israel once considered the Palestinian flag an enemy's flag, no different than the Palestinian militant Hamas or the Lebanese Shiite Hezbollah. But after Israel and the Palestinians signed a series of interim peace agreements known as the Oslo Accords, the flag was recognized as the flag of the Palestinian Authority. With peace talks a distant memory and the occupation dragging on, the battle over the flag shows how far from a reality Palestinian statehood is, with the nationalist narrative in Israel increasingly going mainstream. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
Time now for all the sporting action. In cricket, Sarfaraz Khan continued his run-scoring spree in Ranji Trophy, notching his third 100 of the season to put Mumbai in control on day 2 of the second quarter-final against Uttarakhand. In 4 matches, Sarfaraz has already amassed 704 runs at an incredible average of 140.80. In table tennis, young player Dahiya Chitale, who had approached the Delhi High Court over her exclusion from the women's CWG squad, has today included in the side of at the expense of Archana Kamath. The Committee of Administrators running the suspended Table Tennis Federation of India had last week announced a provisional women's team comprising Manika Batra, Kamath, Srija Akula and Reet Rashia in the team with 19-year-old Chitale as the standby. On to football, Indian skipper Sunil Chhetri will get a chance to bolster his tally of 80 international goals as the Indian team gears up to take on Cambodia on Wednesday in its bid to make a 5th appearance in AFC Cup tournament. World champions France were held to a 1-1 draw by Croatia at home in the Nations League. The result left both teams still chasing a first win in the tournament. Juventus midfielder Adrien Rabiot fired France ahead. Croatia equalized 7 minutes from time when Andres Kramaric won the coveted spot kick. In the Norway chess tournament, India's Vishwanathan Anand drew his 6th round contest against Anish Giri of the Netherlands in the classical section. The match ended in a draw, after which the Armageddon ended in stalemate to leave Anand on 11.5 points and in the second place. Before we wrap, let's take a look at the headlines once again. 3 Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists, including 2 Pakistani terrorists, shot dead in Jammu and Kashmir. More than a dozen people detained in raids against terrorists in the valley. 70% reduction in districts affected by left-wing extremism. AFSPA removed from over 66% area of Northeast, says Union Home Minister at the inauguration ceremony of National Tribal Research Institute. The ex-cleared for the appointment of new CDS. Defence Ministry notifies change in rules. Retired officers from rank of Lieutenant General or General also eligible for the post. Not just knowledge, new education policy focuses on skill development also. President Kovind says higher educational institutions have a huge role in the development of the country. Civil Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia announces the first National Air Sports Policy 2022 focus on 11 air sports including ballooning, gliding and parachuting. That's all we have in this bulletin. To keep yourself updated, stay tuned to Sansad TV. Till next time, goodbye, namaskar.